At this point, Ian McDonald and Dara Smith have been navigating their way through electronic music as Lakker for well over a decade. In the last couple of years, they have redefined their sound by stripping back to focus on what should always be at the very core of all good music: a strong idea. This approach has resulted in a string of well-received releases and remixes on labels such as Blueprint Records, Killy Kill, Candela Rising, Reactivate, Stroboscopic Artefacts, R&S and Anti-Raza. We met up with Dara and Ian in their hometown of Dublin to find out a little more about their background, influences and relationship with music. We also got an insight into their creative processes as they explained some of the techniques that they used in Ableton Live to produce Asvattha, one of the tracks from their Monad XIV release on Stroboscopic Artefacts.
When we were kind of final year of school kind of thing, what we been 17, 18 or so, through a mutual friend, we'd been kind of, myself and a friend from school had been kind of getting an idea together to get a band together, some sort of electronic band. We were big into rave music and old school hardcore and the Prodigy and stuff like that. So we had for ages wanted to get some sort of thing together where we could make music, but we had no actual way of making music because none of us had any gear. And then I think my friend Phil met Dara at a party and they got talking, and Dara had been already making tunes. He had gear and a setup, so we kind of got together and said we'd form a band together. So that developed into kind of us meeting, and then we did a band thing for 3 or 4 years.
Pretty much every week.
Yeah,
Tortured my parents.
Yeah, we get together in his kind of home studio once a week for about 4 years maybe. We had this 4-piece band, 2 of us, my other friend Phil, another friend of ours Gav, and we did that for probably about 4 years. When we were about 18 to about 21, that's 3 years, something like that. Yeah. And then that kind of fell apart, and then we were still kind of the same buzz musically. We kind of had both kind of gotten more into electronic stuff from what we originally had set out to do. We got more into the warp sound and people like Plaid and Tecker. And so we said after that band broke up, we'd continue making tunes. When I was about 11 or 12, I started kind of getting into music really seriously. When it was like Def Leppard and Guns N' Roses were the two. I think because my big brother had the tape of their albums, and they were the two things that I got into. And so I really liked kind of metal and rock music then for ages. Nirvana, Pearl Jam, and all that kind of thing was happening. Fate No More, I remember being mad into them when I was young as well. And then I was about 16, maybe a bit earlier, maybe about 13, 14, started getting into rave music, because that's when it would have been happening, I suppose, in the UK, when things were really kicking off with the kind of the hardcore rave stuff, like about 92 or so, all the kind of really dark hoovery ravey stuff that I really got into then.
Well, you guys were into that. I was like, I don't think I knew you at that stage, but I was more into, I actually got a Carl Cox's fact off my friend's dad, and he sent it to us in the Gaelic. It was mad. He was like introduced us to loads of stuff like Aphex and Carl Cox and like techno and stuff like that, and then I actually got into all the techno, the Blueprint stuff. So it was really weird years later, like that kind of cycle coming back around, because I would have cool. When I was in college, or when I was in school and college, I would have spent like my lunch money buying, Surgeon records and stuff like that. And
when you started DJing, it was mostly techno.
Yeah, it was mostly techno, and I mixed in a bit of drum and bass and a bit of hip hop and a bit of Prodigy and stuff like that. But yeah, I love that. It was just such a different sound. It was so sparse and so heavy, some of it, and also my dad hated it. So it was like, it's really hard to rebel against your dad when he likes Rage Against the Machine, So it's like, what do I do here? Techno. I hate that. So
brilliant.
That kind of helped.
Yeah, so I think from there, when we were starting Lakker, though, our taste but we both got into the same kind of stuff. Particularly Warp and Reflex records were like the two things that at the time just really excited us the most. It just seemed like everything that came out in either of those labels was absolutely essential and was just really, really good, and that got us. I think that kind of informed our sound early on,
because there was such an amount of musicalness to it, if you know what I mean. It was like,
it was like
Reflex
called a brain dance.
Yeah, really interesting melodies, like interesting structures, like really interesting sound and stuff like that. So that was yeah, a huge influence on us.
Put out the album Ruido in 2007, and that was kind of our, I suppose, statement of what we had done to that point.
Yeah.
We took a lot of time with that album, and was kind of summed up everything we'd done to that point, bar some other kind of breakcore stuff we'd been doing. We'd been making various different types of bits, and we had a kind of a separate name for our breakcore stuff. It's like the Lakker rave system or something. And we'd done loads of different things, but this is kind of what we wanted our sound to be at the time, was this album we put out in 2007. And then after that, not for musical reasons, just personal reasons, we both did a bit of travelling just to go and see the world, and Dara went away in 2007 to 2008 or so, and then I was away 2008 to 2009. So for that period, kind of nothing Lakker was happening. Like there was,
it was nearly 3 years of a kind of break in terms of from the start to finish of it.
And it was probably needed, because we'd been making tunes since the band broke up. That was about 2001. So making tunes for about 6 years of various different styles, and that was, looking back, all kind of a pretty much a learning process. I think we always had the back of our mind where we wanted to get to. We were like too young and eager to just do too many things back then. So it was cool to just learn and to try out loads of different sounds, and that all kind of came together in 2007 on the album. And then, I don't know, I think in the process of being away, just, again, not even just musically, you're away from all the things that you're familiar with, your family, your friends, and you kind of think about who you are a bit more. And for me, it was like, I don't know if you got this, for me it was like, thought of who I was personally and musically as well, and kind of what I actually wanted to do musically, both kind of for my own stuff and then with Lakker. And I kind of decided I wanted to get more, kind of the music I really loved was always music that kind of skirted kind of dance floor stuff and more experimental things, like people like Techno would have these really out there things, but you could go to it in a club and listen to it and still dance to it. They always had a rhythm. It was always really repetitive, but in a subtle way. Same with like Aphex stuff and a lot of the stuff that I really, really loved, and music that had touched me deeply. And I was like, okay, I want to get more, do more of that type of stuff. Really good, interesting electronic music that I would want to play in my own DJ sets, because I think a lot of the old Lakker stuff, I don't think I've ever played in a DJ set. It just didn't fit and didn't work. So that was kind of what I was coming from when I came back from my travels. I don't know if you had a similar kind of thing.
Yeah, I think so. I think also I think maybe the Lakker before that was, we were nearly afraid to write stuff that worked on a dance floor. We were like
trying to be too experimental.
We were trying to be kind of nearly a bit too arty, and just just not being actually true to, like, would we like, if we went out and we're at a good night, would we like to hear this music? And
probably you things where you just want to be the craziest and make the most experimental
exactly
shit.
And I think that's something that, when you get a bit older, you just get the confidence in who you actually are, and just be like, it's okay to write a really simple, interesting techno track.
That's been simple, or everything doesn't have to be massively complex.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to be crazy and experimental or whatever to be good. And I suppose that's just the confidence you get when you become an old fart or whatever. But
we both got back, and we both got back in the studio together. We sat down one day and just decided to actually, what we were going to do. And we decided there's no point in us doing this unless we're actually kind of going to focus on what it is that we've always said we wanted. We always had this idea in our head of writing really, we put it as smart dance floor music, so music that you could listen to in a club and it would really work, and would work in the context of a DJ set, but that also then works outside of that. You could just listen to at night on your headphones and it would still work. So just really musically interesting stuff with good rhythms that you can both dance to and listen to. It's a pretty simple simple kind of manifesto, but we'd never really kind of...
Yeah, it's funny, we actually wrote it down, and I think sometimes doing, a simple thing like that of just sitting down and going, okay, let's focus, what are we trying to do here?
Yeah.
And that really helped us, actually.
Yeah, I think that really, more than anything kind of informed our sound now.
It really helped us hone our sound and kind of figure out what we were about, and, kind of stopped some of the, crazy, let's try this, let's try this, let's try this, let's try this, Yeah,
we always, I think how we used to sit in the studio and produce, we'd get an idea, and then we'd go, we have to change it, and then that would go for a bit, and then we'd have to change that, and now we're just like trying to reverse the thing where we just have one idea, and it's like, how long can we sustain that for? Or just have less ideas, try to pare everything back.
Music has just always been something that's there for me. Like, I suppose I get a lot of it from my dad. He was just always like, we listened to like Jimi Hendrix albums and like all these old rock albums and stuff. And ever since that, and my mum used to listen to this like Lorne Anderson, some kind of old weird stuff as well, you know. So there was always loads of music in the house and kind of interesting stuff, you know. And then it was like I've always been interested in sound, and you know, find myself kind of pretty much tapping everything I walk past and stuff, and just listening to it, and it's just, you know, and I'm pretty obsessed about stuff, so I just kind of always thinking about it, maybe a little bit too much sometimes, but it's been the one thing that I've never kind of, you know, like moved away from, or like it's just something I find really comforting, and just that thing of like being able to put on headphones and, you know, like just get a space where, you know, like hours can disappear or whatever, you know. It's the one place I find it easy to concentrate, you know, and it's just something I would, even if like no one ever, you know, even if Lakker, like, you know, ended up in a furious fight in the morning and we hated each other or whatever, or
over biscuits.
You know, yeah, over biscuits, or just, you know, no matter what happened, it's something I would always do, you know, and like, you know, so it's just always been there, and it's such a constant in my life. I can't think of, you know, I can't think of what it means to me, because it's basically that's all there is, you know.
Yeah. What does having legs mean to you?
Yeah,
it's always been there.
Yeah, it's always the way it's been. So
yeah, it's kind of similar for me. Just it means a lot. Yeah, it's the same for me. I couldn't imagine a life without music. It just wouldn't really make any sense.
We've both done it in college, or
yeah, did it in college.
Sound,
done it all along. Well, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a professional footballer for a while. Really seriously, used to ride away to clubs and ask could I have trials and play with them, but it was never as serious as the music. When I got properly into music, that just consumed my life. Again, in a good and bad way, said like a bit too much sometimes. It can kind of take over, and you kind of forget to have a life outside of it, which is can be a bit detrimental. I remember reading a really good interview in The Wire with the Bug, and he was saying the same things. It was a really interesting interview, and he came across really well. But he was saying the same things. He said his music has like ended relationships. It's isolated him from people. It's done all these really negative things as well as all the positive things, like the joy you feel when you make music, and the kind of, you know, on a really deep level, it's really powerful, and you feel all these emotions from this really abstract thing with just like sound. But yeah, it can affect you really. I suppose when you get obsessed with anything, it can be like an addiction. I did, like, you know, I wouldn't think twice about, you know, not going out with friends or whatever. If I had a space of time and I was just like, okay, I have to have an idea in my head, I just cut everyone off. I wouldn't. Yeah, it's funny, but I think it's ultimately a good thing. It's not like it's
not that I do it all the time, but just, you know, just when you have an idea, or, you know, when you've started something, you have to get it out. You have to finish it. Yeah, it has to be done. Otherwise, otherwise there's no point in doing it. You know. Yeah,
and it's like I said, it's one of those things that never goes away. It's always in your mind. It's not like a job where you can go and do your 8 hours and come home and switch off. It's just not non-stop. You'll always have ideas. When you wake up, when you go to sleep, hours lying in bed going, I should get up and write that down, but you don't, and then you lose it. Yeah, but it's always there. It doesn't stop. Like,
and I think also because we have we're like super into kind of, you know, sound and field recording and that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
like
we're total nerds as well.
Yeah, once you get into that sort of stuff, like, you basically hear, like, you know, interesting noises all the time, every day. Like one of our favourite sounds we're using a good bit at the minute is like a sound of I don't know, it's like a machine from somewhere in town or whatever, and it's one of those drainage things that they use to, like, you know, clear drains or whatever, and it was on South William Street, and it just made this huge roar, and it kind of filled up the whole street, you know. And I was just standing there, like, in absolute wonder, like, whipped out my phone, recorded it or whatever, and it's amazing. It's like this kind of starts off, you can tell it's a sound, and then it just fills out the whole space, and it becomes like this like pure tone, you know. And like, so I love stuff like that, like recording it, you know, then trying to, you know, bringing it back, putting it into a sampler, figuring out, you know, what note it is and tuning it and stuff like that. So once you know, you become that. Even my dad says it now. He's like, anytime he hears a funny sound, he'll just go sample it, because he's so used to me, you know, like, you know, he's like this garage full of, like, you know, like loads of different, you know, machines, and he's super into his DIY, and he's all sorts of crazy stuff. So I'd be down there, like, he'd be trying to do something, and I'd be just knocking on everything, driving him mad, you know. Like, I've really enjoyed some of the gigs we've done, and just, like, really feeling that kind of, you know, the buzz of performing, and the, you know, like, bit of nervousness beforehand, and, you know, now that we're kind of getting our live set and our AV show and up you know, it's kind of really starting to come together for us. Like I really enjoy, you know, coming off after some of the gigs, you know, coming off stage and just being like, you know, feeling that
adrenaline.
Feeling that adrenaline. And you know, also I think for us there's, you know, something that maybe contributes to that kind of adrenaline is the fact that we're not really like, sometimes maybe we get booked for like gigs that might be, you know, a more kind of, you know, a techno crowd or whatever.
Yeah, more club orientated.
And we're not, you know, especially when we do our AV show, we're not just like, you know, get up, mute in and out the 4/4 kick and, you know, just, you know, kind of keep doing that sort of stuff. I mean,
we're not techno DJs.
We're not.
We're trying to.
Yeah, we're trying to kind of like we're trying to do a live set, a live performance, like a live PA or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I like the thing that I've enjoyed most recently is when, you know, when we start, sometimes people won't know, they'll be a bit like, what's going on here or whatever, because sometimes we might start a bit slower, or, you know, with just a different sound, it'll be a bit of a jump from maybe the person playing beforehand, but then, you know, trying to kind of, and then eventually bringing those people in and kind of, you know,
I suppose the feeling that crowd is going with you, even if it's not what they had initially
expected.
Exactly,
and that's and then it's kind of a journey, and then, you know, by the end, you know, if you really get a reaction off people, it's such a buzz that the kind of,
it's amazing feeling.
Yeah, when people kind of, you know, when they respond to something, you know, especially if you've tried to take a bit of a risk or do something a bit different, and, you know, people, you know, really respond to that, and they come up afterwards and they say it, they're like, oh yeah, it was really different, really interesting or whatever. And so
sometimes that's happened. The recent Fusion Festival we played, Fusion Festival in Germany a month ago, and the guy before us was Felix K was playing before us, and he's played an amazing techno set, like, and he just had the crowd like here when he finished, and we were just like, oh shit, because we just started a lot slower, and we just didn't want to start here. We just wanted to bring the kind of tempo back down, and we kind of lost a lot of the crowd at the start. It was kind of like, oh shit, have we made the wrong decision here? We kind of, you know, lost too many people. But then by the end of the set again, the energy was right back up. Creating the sound, that's often the work with the drums, get a sound or a rough kind of sound that we want to work with before making the actual pattern of the beats. So a lot of times it works with just, probably the same for this track, just put in a simple pattern, maybe just a 4/4 kick, and then just synthesize the drum sound, and then put in a simple snare pattern and just work on the actual sound of the snare and the hat. So just get a really simple pattern first and then rejig it to fit the track. So I think in Asvattha we had that synth sound we were talking about a minute ago, which kind of starts at pretty abstract, and then it kind of settles into some sort of groove, where the beats actually come in. It kind of has settled into some sort of fairly repetitive pattern. Just slow it down. Yeah, you can hear it there along with it. Kind of does the same thing. So after the kind of initial more abstract opening, so I just was trying to find a pattern to work with that, and that little kind of almost like dancehall thing seemed to work when I was messing around with the beats, so we kind of stuck with that, and then it kind of developed from there with more kind of just kept adding hats in a kind of more techno-like fashion. As the thing progresses, it starts off kind of slow and more abstract, and it gets a bit more of a kind of, I suppose, a dance floor kind of feel as it goes on. We just keep the rhythm gets steadier and the hats keep coming in. So that kind of the track develops from the initial pattern in a really simple way. Again, just adding basic patterns on top with the hats. I think there's extra layers of hats that are samples in there, but I think that they're just samples from a loop that we made earlier. Always kind of making little loops and just sticking them in a bank of simple stuff like that, hat patterns and kick patterns, just so you have easy stuff to draw from in the studio. That it's very quick if you just want something simple like that and something that you will always use. So we just have a big sample bank of stuff. So that was just a few layers of hats were just thrown in and they worked, so we're like, grand, stick with them. So in terms of actually programming the beat, it was all done with the mouse in the kind of the window. I don't know what Ableton call the actual window, where you just double click, the MIDI window opens up and just clicked in the patterns. That fella right there. So again, the pattern itself is pretty simple. If you look at it there, if you're used to looking at the screen, it looks super simple. Just kick hats and snares, and then the interest lies, as we're saying, in the kind of balance between the actual pattern that you wrote and then the sounds. So the sounds are moving, even though the pattern's pretty static. The sounds are constantly moving, so it gives it a kind of a looser, more kind of organic kind of groove. I hope. And so that's how the beats kind of were formed in that track, and that's a lot of time how we work. Sometimes we'll take off the grid and move the notes around, so they're not actually always bang on the grid, which is I think common with a lot of people beat programming. Again, just to give it that more looser and organic feel, but not always. Sometimes we'll stick bangs to the grid as well. Depends on the track. And they're bang on the grid. So that was so the drums were added next, and then that synth that's now soloed, that was the next thing. Again, it's just if you double click its operator. So I think when I was working on the beats, I had a rough kind of idea for what the beats were down. I just started adding a melodic sound. Just kind of a lot of the way we work. It's a pretty kind of straightforward way of working. We just kind of add little bits to the track as we go. So I just felt it needed a melodic element and a cool soundscapey texture with that kind of snare modeling sound, and had beats, so I just needed some sort of melodic element. And again, I just created that really simple sound and operator, which is just, I think it's a couple of sines and a bit of noise. Again, super simple. It doesn't get simpler. Like a lot of our sounds are the most simple sounds. But
I think the thing about it is we know how to, like I come from using hardware synths, and we both kind of know just quickly how to make the exact sounds we're looking for, and we know with operator, just we're just quick at it now. So and that's the most inspiring thing.
Visual, it sounds good. You kind of have an idea for an ethereal kind of pad sound, and you just know, okay, a couple of sines and a bit of white noise, you're going to be in the ballpark kind of area. And then just messing with the filters and subtle LFOs. I don't know what else is on there. It's probably just a bit of reverb.
Some reverb, some distortion, reverb again.
And some more filtering. So again, it's just really straightforward, but it's what works for the track is always what you go for. And a lot of the time, the more simple stuff is what we find has worked recently. So that was the next thing I went down. Do you think the actual melodic pattern was just using the keys on the actual on the laptop? Because I think I was doing it while I was working one day. I was working and I just had my laptop with me, and I just had some headphones, and I was sitting there in a bit of spare time and just kind of wrote it on the keyboard there.
Which is the amazing thing about, like, especially when you're coming from a hardware background, you can really only write when you're in the studio. But like the great thing is, like, even as you do more gigs and you spend more time on the road, you always have your laptop with you, so you can just be writing bits and pieces. And I love writing when I'm away and when I'm in different places and stuff. All you need is your headphones. And
good music just comes from like having interesting ideas and an interesting approach to things, and you can have that anywhere. That's great. That's like all we need to make tunes these days is the laptop pretty much, and a copy of Ableton, and we're away. So it's great to be able to just, when a bit of inspiration strikes, if you've got your laptop on you can sit down and do it. And that was this case. This track was a case in point where some of it was on the studio, some of it was done on headphones, just sitting in a College of Music in Dublin City Centre.
So another thing we do a good bit of is kind of resampling of, we'll have a piece, we'll have something going, bit of a jam. We're like, okay, that's nice, and then resample it out. And then another little bit of free software I use at the minute is called Paul Stretch, which does just this amazing time stretching or like ridiculous time stretching.
I'm sure everyone's heard that Justin Bieber slowed down 500% thing.
Yeah,
or whatever.
yeah.
Just creates
But there's also
textures.
you get to notice the sound of it straight away. But there is other interesting stuff you can do that you can add in, like octaves, and it has an interesting thing of taking out noise and putting in noise and taking out the harmonic content. So there's some cool stuff you can do with it. And then this other sound here is we kind of sometimes we'll just do jam sessions where we'll like have like an idea or just something, and we'll just jam with it for as long as we can. So this one here, I think these were done in from when I was in Trinity in the museum building. Just some fan sound, and then we were playing that back into the room in here. So just that kind of thing of playing stuff back into a room and kind of getting the resonance of the room. It's pretty interesting. Yeah. And so then we have a big bank of all that stuff of just different things recorded in different places, played off, so it'll be recorded here, played off a phone somewhere, recorded on something else, and you just get different sounds of different spaces and stuff.
And they always come in handy for just adding atmosphere and texture to a piece. You might have something that's just missing some element, and all it needs is a bit of atmosphere in the background, and then it's like, oh, that now sounds like a full piece of music.
And then with that you just get these little, you can hear some of them there, just these little harmonic bits of feedback that there'll be a harmonic sound in there, and it'll hit the resonance of the room, and you'll get like a really lovely
and then you just tune that to whatever the melodic content of whatever piece of music we're working on is, and it just kind of, it always seems to sit and work. So a lot of electronic music like this it's all about the details a lot of the time, and production and stuff like this just can really set a piece off. I suppose it's something that's kind of static, and
so that's kind of we use that a good bit to that sort of thing, a good bit to kind of give our tunes a bit of life, I suppose.
There's another right there. What's track 11? Is it 12?
This one here?
Yeah, it's more resampling.
Yeah, so this is more resampling. This is just resampling from within Ableton.
Yeah, so just resampling this cylinder synth.
So it might have been just stretching around the cylinder, and it just creates different rhythms, and depending on what way you stretch it and stuff, creates kind of different textures and stuff like that. And that's again something that inspires us, is just taking something and trying to process it different ways. Just take something small and make something big out of it, I suppose.
I think it kind of helps to organically create a piece of music when you've got a few ideas and you're resampling those ideas and putting them back into the same piece. It kind of begins to have a sound of its own, and like everything exists within its own sound space and its own sound world, and it kind of helps to really, especially if you're stuck for ideas, just resample some audio, mess around with it, and then suddenly something that has come from the piece will present itself, and it's something new, but it also works within the context of the piece you're working on. So that's something we find really helpful to just there's always have a resample channel in the file we're working on, and then just be resampling bits of audio as we go for extra ideas, or sometimes, as we were talking earlier, it becomes an idea for a different track. It's just a handy little thing that Ableton has as well, that you can just do it really quickly and easily.
And then basically we just pass the tracks back and forward until we're happy. Some tracks will go back and forward literally only twice or three times, and they sometimes can be the best ones. And then some tracks
very clear idea of what happens.
Some tracks will go on for ages, and
they can be a friggin' nightmare.
Yeah, and sometimes they'll go nowhere. Sometimes they will. It'll be just a little change, or like you said, you'll just solo something out and go, do you know what, the rest of it was bullshit. This is
get rid of it.
Here's the interesting core of it. Here's what makes the track interesting. And
I think this particular track happened pretty quickly. It was like, because all the sounds were so good. You did that initial snare modelling thing that was really good, and I did the drums, and I was like really happy with the sound of them and the melody. And then I think I get back to you, and you did some of the resampling stuff, and it all just kind of happened. Everything that we kind of had added to it just sounded good. So then it was just at the end, it was just a matter of making sure the structure had enough.
Can happen within a week sometimes. A track can go from like nothing to being done. So,
but then there's other tracks like Arc, off the first Blueprint release we did. We actually wrote the initial loop for that back in about 2009 when we kind of came back from our travels and one of those sessions then, and we thought that loop was so good that we didn't know what to do with it. We were just like, nothing else we tried with it didn't match up. We thought this loop was amazing. It's probably the best loop we've ever made, but nothing came close to it until one day we sat down and it just clicked. Just the things we did add to it worked, and the piece wrote itself in an afternoon. But after about 2 years of sitting there, our hard drive was going.
It took 2 years to write it in an afternoon.
Yeah. It's weird though. We kept opening it and going, okay, maybe today we'll find something good to go with this. And
but it's about being. You're probably a bit better than I am at that. It's about being strict at, just going, okay, we're degrading this by adding stuff to it. It's having that confidence just to go.
Yeah, you know what doesn't work. Yeah. We also know what works, but sometimes
you'll be trying to convince yourself it is working. Though,
sometimes it's hard to know what doesn't work. You're trying.
I'm really interested in what I'm doing. Yeah, it's really working, and then actually no, it's total shit. And also, that's when it's handy having two people because you be there like trying to. Mind witch yourself into the fact that it's good.
It is good,
and then you just shout to the other person that it's bullshit.
Because it's also the time thing. You can spend hours working on something and put so much of your time and effort into it, and still it doesn't sound right at the end. And you have to be it's really hard to then take a step back and go, my entire week at work this week, it's just rubbish. Like it's worth deleting. And it's really hard to make that step, but you have to do it for the sake of.
And that's why the other person just going. I'm quite bluntly saying it's total shit.
Yeah.